yeah, for sure. I'm grateful, and indirectly, it's responsible for my career.
Yeah. You'd like to do this as a series if it takes off?
Oh, sure, I'd love it. I think it'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
You know Lynda Carter as Wonder Woman, the star-spangled superhero who became an icon of American television. But there's a photograph that exists tucked away in film history that shows a side of her most fans never knew existed. A topless centerfold created for one of the greatest war films ever made. And the strangest part, she never actually appeared in the final movie. So how did Wonder Woman herself end up posing nude for Apocalypse Now, only to vanish from the production entirely? The answer involves a typhoon, perfect timing, and a twist of fate that changed television history forever. The centerfold that shouldn't exist. When auction houses started selling Apocalypse Now memorabilia in recent years, collectors expected the usual items: prop weapons, costume pieces, maybe some signed scripts. But then something unusual showed up that made people stop scrolling. A Playboy centerfold featuring Lynda Carter, topless, professional photography, fully produced with the magazine's signature layout and party jokes printed on the back. Everything about it looked authentic except for one glaring problem. Lynda Carter never posed for Playboy. Not in 1979 when Apocalypse Now was released. Not ever. Fans immediately started asking questions. Was this real? Was it edited? Did Wonder Woman secretly pose for an adult magazine before becoming America's favorite superhero? The confusion made sense because by 1979, Lynda Carter had already spent 3 years playing the most wholesome character on television. Wonder Woman represented strength, virtue, and patriotism. The idea of her appearing topless in a men's magazine seemed impossible, but the centerfold was real, just not in the way people assumed. What collectors and fans were looking at was a movie prop, a custom-made centerfold created specifically for Francis Ford Coppola's epic war film. And here's where the story gets complicated. The centerfold exists. The photographs are genuine. Lynda Carter did pose for them, but if you watch Apocalypse Now, you'll never see her face on screen. Not in the theatrical cut, not even in the extended Redux version released in 2001. So what happened? How did Wonder Woman end up involved with one of the most intense war films ever made, pose for a topless centerfold, and then disappear from the project entirely? The answer requires understanding just how chaotic the production of Apocalypse Now actually was. This wasn't a normal movie shoot. It was a production that spiraled so far out of control that many consider the documentary about making it Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse, more harrowing than the actual film. The original budget was $12 million. By the time filming wrapped, it had ballooned to over $30 million. The schedule called for 5 months. Shooting lasted over a year, from March 1976 to May 1977. And somewhere in that chaos, Lynda Carter's brief involvement got swallowed whole, leaving behind only a topless photograph and a costume design that few people ever knew existed. The story starts in the Philippines in 1976, back when Lynda Carter was still a struggling actress who had $25 in her bank account and no idea she was about to become television legend. Before Wonder Woman came calling, to understand how Lynda Carter ended up on the set of Apocalypse Now, you have to understand where she was in 1976. And the answer is simple: nowhere. Born Lynda Jean Cordova Carter on July 24, 1951, in Phoenix, Arizona, she grew up in a regular working-class household. Her father had English and Irish roots. Her mother's family came from Mexico. There were no Hollywood connections, no famous relatives, just a tall girl with striking blue eyes, dramatic dark hair, and a voice that turned heads when she sang sang at the local pizza parlor at age 15. After high school, Carter became a lounge singer, touring nationally with her band. She wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing rent money. By 1972, she shifted to beauty pageants, entering Miss Arizona and winning. That victory led to Miss World USA, which she also won. At the International Miss World pageant that year, she placed in the top 15. Not bad for someone who never wanted to be a beauty queen in the first place. The pageant wins opened doors to acting, so Carter moved to New York City to study. She enrolled in classes with notable instructors like Stella Adler. She started getting bit parts on television shows, small guest spots on Nokia, Starsky, and Hutch, Matt Helm, and Koss. Nothing memorable, nothing that paid well. In 1975, she appeared in a forgettable, low-budget Western called Bobby Joe and the Outlaw. Critics ignored it. Audiences forgot it. By early 1976, Carter was broke. The money she'd saved from touring with her band was almost gone. She later admitted that when she finally landed the role of Wonder Woman, she had exactly $25 left in her bank account. She was literally days away from giving up and moving back to Arizona. But before Wonder Woman happened, another opportunity appeared. Francis Ford Coppola was casting for his ambitious Vietnam War epic, Apocalypse Now. The film was being shot in the Philippines with a massive budget and an even bigger vision. Coppola needed actresses to play Playboy playmates who would perform at a chaotic USO show for war-weary troops. Carter auditioned for the role of Miss May, and she got it. It wasn't a starring role. Miss May had no dialogue in the original script. She would appear during the USO show sequence, dance for the soldiers, and that would be it. But it was work. It was a Francis Ford Coppola film, and most importantly, it required her to travel to the Philippines for location shooting, which meant a paycheck. So in early 1976, Lynda Carter flew to the Philippines to join one of the most troubled film productions in cinema history. What actually happened in the Philippines? When Lynda Carter arrived in the Philippines, she walked onto a set that looked like controlled chaos. Francis Ford Coppola had constructed a massive USO show stage specifically for the film. The set was enormous, designed to hold hundreds of extras playing soldiers, lights, cameras, helicopters. The whole production felt bigger than anything Carter had experienced before. Her role was straightforward. She would play Miss May, one of 3 Playboy playmates flown in to entertain the troops. The other 2 playmates would eventually be played by actresses Cynthia Wood and Linda Carpenter, though at this early stage of production, nobody knew exactly who would fill which role. The MC introducing them would be Bill Graham, a famous music promoter and personal friend of Coppola's. The scene was designed to show how desperate and isolated these soldiers were, how a simple USO show could spiral into chaos when thousands of men who'd been living in the jungle suddenly saw beautiful women on stage. But before any of that could be filmed, Carter had to complete one specific task. She needed to pose for the centerfold. The Playboy centerfold wasn't just set dressing, it was crucial to the story. In the script, soldiers would buy the centerfolds at the USO show. Later in the film, one of the main characters, Chef, would stick Miss May's centerfold on the wall of their patrol boat. The camera would linger on it. Audiences needed to see it clearly enough to recognize the playmate from the USO show. This kind of attention to detail was typical of Coppola's meticulous approach to filmmaking, even if that meticulousness would later contribute to the production's notorious delays. So production hired costume designer Dean Tavoularis, whose brother Alex Tavoularis created detailed sketches for the outfit. The costume was a scanty American Indian-themed outfit, complete with feathers, fringe, and beadwork. Detailed pencil drawings showed every element from multiple angles. A minimal top that would be removed for the actual centerfold shot. Margin notes covered the sketches, along with detail studies showing moccasins and accessories. Every piece was documented precisely. Carter posed for the photographs, professional lighting, multiple angles. The final image showed her topless, wearing only the bottom portion of the costume. Her arms were positioned carefully, her expression confident. The photo was formatted exactly like a real Playboy centerfold, complete with fake party jokes and magazine content printed on the reverse side. It looked indistinguishable from an actual Playboy spread. The centerfold looked perfect. Carter looked perfect. Everything was ready for filming to begin. But Coppola had a problem he didn't yet realize. The massive USO show set had been constructed inland, away from the shore. Soon after construction finished, the director made a devastating discovery. During the actual Vietnam War, USO shows of this scale would have been staged near water because troops arrived by boat. The set was in the wrong location. Coppola told his production team he wanted it destroyed and rebuilt properly by the shore. They refused, saying it was too expensive and ridiculous. Francis was forced to accept that he'd have to find creative camera angles to hide the mistake. Then nature intervened. In late May 1976, Typhoon Olga struck the Philippines. The storm was massive, one of the worst to hit the region in years. And the first thing it destroyed was Coppola's giant USO show set. The entire structure was obliterated, torn apart by wind and rain. What had taken weeks to build was gone in hours. Ironically, Coppola later admitted the Typhoon was a blessing in disguise. It gave him the opportunity to rebuild the set correctly, this time on the shore where it belonged. But it also meant production would shut down for months while everything was reconstructed from scratch. Cast members were sent home while Coppola figured out what to do next. Lynda Carter flew back to America. She'd done the photo shoot. She'd started some preliminary work, but she hadn't filmed a single scene. And now, with production halted indefinitely, she had no idea when or if she'd ever return to finish the job. That's when the phone call came that changed everything. The decision that changed television history. While Lynda Carter waited in America for news about Apocalypse Now, something else was happening in Hollywood. A BC network was desperately trying to revive Wonder Woman after their first attempt had crashed and burned spectacularly. They'd already tried it once in 1974 with actress Kathy Lee Crosby in a made-for-television pilot that completely missed the mark. Crosby's Wonder Woman wore a pantsuit instead of the iconic costume. She fought like a spy, not a superhero. The whole thing felt like a generic action show that happened to license the Wonder Woman name. Critics hated it. Audiences ignored it. The network knew they needed to try again, but this time they needed to get it right. Producer Douglas Kramer started holding auditions in early 1975. Hundreds of actresses showed up hoping to land the part. Every wannabe superhero in Los Angeles wanted that role. The pressure was enormous. Wonder Woman had been an icon since the 1940s, created by psychologist William Moulton Marston as a feminist symbol during World War II. Getting the casting wrong again would kill the character's television potential forever. But when Lynda Carter walked into the audition room, something clicked immediately. She had the look, the height, standing 5 feet 9 inches tall, the dark hair, the striking features, the physical presence. She embodied the character before she even read a line. one producer allegedly warned her, "Oh, women are going to be so jealous of you." Carter responded confidently, "Not a chance." The timing was perfect for multiple reasons beyond just Carter's availability. The year 1975 had been declared International Women's Year by the United Nations. The Equal Rights Amendment had momentum behind it. The women's liberation movement was gaining strength across America. The country was also celebrating its bicentennial in 1976. A show about a strong, patriotic woman who could fight alongside men felt exactly right for the cultural moment. On November 7, 1975, the new Wonder Woman pilot aired on ABC. The new original Wonder Woman, as it was titled, performed incredibly well in the ratings, pulling in 48% of the audience share. Nearly half of all Americans watching television that night chose Wonder Woman, but the network wasn't sure if they wanted a full series. ABC already had The Bionic Woman scheduled for fall 1976. Did they need 2 female-led action shows? They ordered 2 more one-hour episodes to air in spring 1976 as a test. Both episodes, which aired in April, proved equally popular. The ratings were strong. Critics praised Carter's earnest performance. Fan mail poured in. ABC finally committed. They ordered a full season of Wonder Woman starting in fall 1976, and they wanted Lynda Carter under exclusive contract immediately. Now Carter faced an impossible choice. On one hand, she had Apocalypse Now, a Francis Ford Coppola film, prestigious, artistic, the kind of movie that could establish her as a serious actress. On the other hand, she had Wonder Woman, a network television series, steady income, a starring role instead of a bit part, the chance to become a household name instead of another face lost in a war movie ensemble. But there was a problem. The timing made both projects impossible. Wonder Woman would start filming soon and required her full commitment. Apocalypse Now was still shut down because of the typhoon, with no clear timeline for when production would resume. The film's schedule had become notoriously unpredictable. What was supposed to be a 5-month shoot was already stretching indefinitely. If Carter committed to Wonder Woman, she couldn't go back to the Philippines. She'd have to quit Apocalypse Now entirely. Carter later admitted she had no money, $25 in the bank. She was close to giving up acting altogether and returning to Arizona. Her manager called to say Joanna Cassidy had lost the Wonder Woman role and Carter had won it. This wasn't just an opportunity, it was survival. It was the difference between having a career and going back to singing in Arizona lounges. She chose Wonder Woman, which meant she had to tell Francis Ford Coppola she was quitting his movie. How Coppola replaced her and kept her anyway. You can imagine that conversation wasn't easy. Telling one of the greatest directors in film history that you're abandoning his troubled production to go play a superhero on television. It sounds like career harm, but here's the twist. Coppola might have actually been relieved. The production of Apocalypse Now was already a nightmare beyond anything Hollywood had seen. The documentary Hearts of Darkness, which chronicled the making of the film, is considered by many to be more intense than the actual movie. Lead actor Harvey Keitel had been fired after 2 weeks because Coppola decided he was miscast. Replacement Martin Sheen would later have a near-fatal heart attack during filming in March 1977, though he claimed it was heat stroke to prevent investors from pulling funding. Marlon Brando showed up massively overweight, refused to read Heart of Darkness, the Joseph Conrad book the film was based on, and delivered most of his lines nearly unintelligible because of personal issues and heavy drinking. Filming started in March 1976, but the movie wouldn't be finished and released until August 1979. 3 full years of chaos. Coppola shot over 1 million feet of film for Apocalypse Now. A typical 2-hour movie uses about 11,000 feet. He was working with 90 times the normal amount of footage, obsessively editing and re-editing, constantly delaying the release date. At the Cannes Film Festival in May 1979, he famously said of the experience, "We were in the jungle. There were too many of us. We had access to too much money, too much equipment, and little by little we went insane." Losing Lynda Carter was annoying but manageable in the context of everything else going wrong. The role was small, no dialogue in the original theatrical script, just presence. Coppola needed to recast quickly and reshoot the centerfold so continuity wouldn't be ruined. He chose Colleen Camp. Camp was 23 years old, blonde, relatively unknown, and perfect for the part. She flew to the Philippines in late 1976. On December 3rd, she filmed the How Fought USO Bunny Show sequence, the scene where the Playmates perform for increasingly chaotic soldiers who eventually storm the stage. Then she recreated the Playboy centerfold, posing in nearly the same position Lynda Carter had, wearing a similar costume, matching the composition as closely as possible to avoid continuity errors. The new centerfold was shot by renowned Playboy photographer Mario Casilli. It looked professional because it was professional. Playboy magazine actually published Colleen Camp's centerfold in their October 1979 issue after the film was released, turning the movie prop into real magazine content. Camp was featured as Miss May alongside actual Playmate Cynthia Wood, who had been Playmate of the Year in 1974, and Linda Beatty, who was Playmate of the Month. Here's where things get interesting. When Apocalypse Now finally hit theaters in August 1979, some sharp-eyed viewers noticed something strange. The centerfold visible in certain shots didn't quite match Colleen Camp's face. It looked similar, but subtly different, like maybe, just maybe, some of the original Lynda Carter footage had accidentally made it into the final cut. Film historians and prop collectors later confirmed the rumor was true. Coppola had shot some scenes featuring the patrol boat during the production hiatus before Carter left. Those scenes included shots of the centerfold taped to the boat's wheelhouse. And in some of those shots, you can still see the original Lynda Carter centerfold. Not Colleen Camp, Lynda Carter, topless, in one of the greatest war films ever made. The theatrical cut of Apocalypse Now runs 2 hours and 27 minutes. Most of Miss May's scenes were cut. Colleen Camp appears briefly during the USO show sequence, dancing provocatively while soldiers go increasingly wild, but she has no dialogue. You see her. You see the chaos. Then the Playmates are rushed off stage by Bill Graham's MC character before things turn violent. That's it. Then in 2001, Coppola released Apocalypse Now Redux, the director's cut. This version restored over 49 minutes of footage, expanding the runtime to 3 hours and 22 minutes. In this version, Miss May's role increased significantly. There's an entirely new scene where Chef and the other soldiers encounter the Playmates again later in their journey, stranded when their helicopter runs out of fuel. Camp finally got dialogue, actual scenes, character development. The Playmates trade Playboy centerfolds for fuel, a desperate transaction in the middle of the jungle that emphasizes how commodified they've both become. Even in Redux, when Miss May appears in person, it's always Colleen Camp, never Lynda Carter. The only place Carter actually appears is in those brief shots of the centerfold on the boat, a ghost image, a reminder of what almost was, a footnote in one of cinema's most famous productions. Meanwhile, Lynda Carter's decision to choose Wonder Woman over Apocalypse Now proved to be the smartest career move she ever made. What Wonder Woman became and what might have been. The Wonder Woman series premiered on ABC in April 1976 and immediately became a cultural phenomenon. Set during World War II, it combined superhero action with wartime nostalgia and arrived at the perfect moment. The women's liberation movement was gaining momentum. America was celebrating its bicentennial. A show about a strong, patriotic woman who could fight alongside men felt exactly right for the times. Carter wasn't just playing a character. She was embodying an icon. Earnest performance combined with an accurate costume and a catchy theme song written by Charles Fox and Norman Gimbel created something that felt definitive. She did most of her own stunts, including hanging from a helicopter during the second season episode Anschluss 77, which made CBS executives extremely nervous about insurance liability. She maintained a strict diet and rigorous exercise routine to stay in superhero shape. She understood the responsibility of bringing a beloved comic book character to life. Being Wonder Woman came with unexpected complications. In 1978, Carter confessed to reporters, "I never thought a picture of my body would be tacked up in men's bathrooms. I hate men looking at me and thinking what they think, and I know what they think. They write and tell me." The show walked a difficult line between female empowerment and the male gaze. Some radical feminists saw it as a sellout, but Carter defended the character, saying, "I think of Wonder Woman as a real champion of the feminists. She's stronger than any man physically. She is fast, flies in an invisible plane, and can force anyone to tell the truth." The show ran for 3 seasons, from 1975 to 1979, 60 episodes total. First on ABC for the World War II set first season, then moving to CBS for the final 2 seasons, where the setting shifted to the modern 1970s and title changed to The New Adventures of Wonder Woman. Throughout it all, Carter remained the heart of the show. In 1978, she was voted the most beautiful woman in the world by the International Academy of Beauty and the British Press Organization. She signed a modeling contract with Maybelline Cosmetics in 1977. She released a promotional poster through Pro Arts that became one of the best-selling celebrity posters of the decade. She became a genuine star. The first season ranked number 45 in the ratings and received positive reviews. ABC was satisfied enough to order more episodes, though they eventually let the show go due to budget concerns. World War II settings required expensive period costumes and vehicles. CBS picked it up and modernized it, which reduced production costs significantly. The show continued successfully for 2 more seasons before ending in September 1979. Wonder Woman turned Lynda Carter into a household name. Today, at 73 years old, she's still recognized primarily for that role. She made a cameo in Wonder Woman 1984 as Asteria, a legendary Amazon warrior to Gal Gadot's version of the character. She's remained active in entertainment, voice acting in video games like Fallout 4, playing President Olivia Marsden on Supergirl from 2016 to 2018, appearing in The Muppet Show in 1980. She also pursued music seriously during and after Wonder Woman. In the late 1970s, she recorded the album Portrait. She sang two of her songs in a 1979 Wonder Woman episode, Amazon Hot Whack. She appeared in various variety television programs as a musical guest. She became the first woman to provide a voiceover for a movie trailer, doing so for the 1975 film The Drowning Pool. Compare that to what happened with Apocalypse Now. The film was released in August 1979 to widespread critical acclaim. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards and won 2 for Best Cinematography and Best Sound. Film scholars consider it one of the greatest war movies ever made, regularly appearing on lists of the best films of all time. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars and called it one of the greatest films ever made. But for Colleen Camp, who actually played Miss May in the final film, it didn't lead to superstardom. Camp had a solid career. She appeared in comedies like Clue in 1985, Valley Girl in 1983, and 2 Police Academy films. She worked steadily for decades, accumulating over 100 credits, but she never became a household name. Most people don't even remember she was in Apocalypse Now because her role was so small and most of her scenes were cut from the theatrical version. If Lynda Carter had stayed with Apocalypse Now, she likely would have experienced the same fate. A brief appearance in a great film, obscurity. No one remembers the actress who played a playmate in a single scene, no matter how prestigious the movie is. The role had no dialogue in the theatrical cut. Dancing, just being objectified by war-weary soldiers. Just a pretty face in the chaos. Everyone remembers Wonder Woman. The centerfold still exists. Prop collectors buy and sell it at auctions, where it commands surprisingly high prices because of its unique place in entertainment history. The costume sketches by Alex Tavoularis surface occasionally, showing the detailed American Indian-themed outfit designed specifically for Lynda Carter. Film historians point out the shots in both cuts of Apocalypse Now, where you can see her centerfold image on the boat instead of Colleen Camp's, preserved accidentally in footage shot before she left the production. It's a strange footnote in entertainment history. Wonder Woman posed topless for one of the greatest war films ever made, never actually appeared in it beyond a photograph. She made the choice that seemed risky at the time, turning down Francis Ford Coppola to play a superhero on television, and that choice defined her entire career. Sometimes the right decision looks like the wrong one. Walking away from prestige leads to something bigger, and sometimes a typhoon in the Philippines changes the course of television history without anyone realizing it until decades later. Lynda Carter bared it all for Apocalypse Now. Then she became Wonder Woman. Somewhere in film archives and private collections, that topless centerfold still exists. A reminder, path not taken, the strange way fate worked in Hollywood. The image is real. The story is wild. And most people never knew any of it happened until rare memorabilia started appearing at auctions, making fans ask the question that started this whole story. Did Wonder Woman really pose for Playboy? The answer is yes and no, and it's complicated. She posed for a prop that looked exactly like a Playboy centerfold, created with the same professional photography standards, formatted with the same layout, even printed with fake party jokes on the back. it was never meant for publication. It was meant for a movie she never finished. A movie where her topless image still appears for a few brief seconds if you know where to look. Just like everything else about Apocalypse Now, the truth is messy, unexpected, far stranger than fiction. What are your thoughts about these revelations about Lynda Carter? Share with us in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.